So, welcome to another episode of MENable Matters with me, Steve Whitten. I'm the founder of MENable, and I'm absolutely delighted today to be joined by a very, very special guest indeed. This is a chap who I met on a recent trip to the United States. He's a prolific in the automotive industry over there, and as soon as MENable was talked about, he put himself forward and said, I want to be a representative and ambassador for MENable in the US. And it's absolutely a massive delight for me to introduce our ambassador today, Russ Mann. Russ, how are you?
Oh, wow. I'm doing outstanding, Stephen. Thanks for asking.
You're more than welcome. I hope that was a decent enough intro for you.
That's more than enough. More than enough. Thank you.
Okay, Russ, he's always very, what's the word, modest. So I'll tell you what, in good old MENable Matters style, if you could just tell us who you are, where you're from and what you do, and a little bit of background as to how you come about being a part of MENable, that would be amazing.
Yeah. So we did. Obviously, I'm a 27-year veteran of the automobile industry here in the United States.
Hmm.
Most of that is in building teams and organizations through the lender side, the subprime lending side. That's where I really learned to be consultative. And understand and be and have an understanding of how dealerships really work and how they operate and the transactional based process that what the auto industry is today in the United States. Um, and so I was born overseas to a military family
Hmm.
in Taiwan, and so that's also very important to me. But when you first started to bring this up in the series of videos on your patio, I absolutely felt it and knew that the passion that you had to help others and to pass or bring forward or pay forward a supportive place and a safe place for people to express their opinions. Um, I think is the basis of any cultural business, any culture in a business, and in the creation of the customer experience for those customers that do business with that company. I absolutely was drawn into it, saw it, knew that it was something that needed to happen in the United States as well. Obviously, I reached out and we're having this conversation again today.
And here we are today. No, absolutely. And you're one of the founding ambassador members as well. Right the way back, well, I say right the way back at this stage. We're talking a few weeks ago, really, aren't we? A couple of months or so.
Yeah.
But give us a quick overview of the US market then. So for anyone who's listening in the UK or anywhere else outside of the US, what's the US automotive market actually like from a perspective of men's mental health? Loaded question, and deliberately so. We'll come back to why it is.
Yeah. So the automobile industry in the United States is it is multifaceted, and I think generates a process that really hinders the leadership and sales teams and service teams in a way that it can be detrimental to their own mental health,
Right,
right?
right.
So the pressure to produce, I mean, we have a whole bunch of cliched sayings like hero to zero, I mean, those kinds of things are are crescendo building type pressures
Hmm.
that at the end of the 30 days you are either a hero or you are zero, right? And
Wow.
it's also, but because the term is used for the first day of the month, right? Now you were a hero yesterday and now you are nothing today. And I think that over time in the transactional based process of the US automobile industry um, has been a detriment. I mean, they talk about divorce in the car business. It's real. I mean, it
Mm-hmm.
is real. I don't know what those stats are, but it happened to me. I frankly, I regret the hours and the energy and the effort that I put into um, uh, make it what I thought was making a better life for myself and my family
Hmm.
by making a whole bunch of money. Because the car business, you can make a whole lot of money, but I completely missed my kids growing up.
Right.
Right? I
Yeah.
mean, I
Yeah.
completely missed it, and there's a huge regret, and want to certainly make sure that people in general, understand that You only have one life, and you need to live it in the best way you know at the time. And at the time, that's what I knew, right?
Mm.
At the time, that's what I felt like I was doing the right thing by providing for my family, and doing it in the automobile business. I loved what I did because I did special finance. So I really got a chance to help a lot of people make a difference in their own lives with transportation. If you don't have good transportation in the United States, it's a real challenge to take care of your family.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
And
yeah,
so,
yeah.
those are the kind of the bases of what the automobile industry, and I'm sure it's not much different than in the UK. And
Not at all.
here,
That's why I was asking the question. I mean, obviously, the US is vast, isn't it, in terms of size compared to the UK? But yeah, I mean, what you've just described there is probably a very similar picture that many people would identify with, I would imagine.
yeah, yeah. And then as we continue to move away from that transact, because I think in order to create a customer experience
Hmm.
for the person, excuse me, the people that are buying the vehicles, or excuse me, going into the service drives and doing and interacting with those auto dealerships, each one of them is, and when you try to create a customer experience for them, it's very difficult to do when your staff is transactional based, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Like, would you sell this product to your mother? No, I wouldn't, right? But would you sell this product to your mother because feeding your kids mattered and it was the only way that you knew how to do it and you were pressured in that way to do it?
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
Then you'd sell it, right?
Mm.
That's really the difference when it comes from a culture of positivity to a transactional based conversation that are pressurized every 30 days.
Yeah, yeah. Now, has any of that changed in the last few months with the pandemic? And, I don't want to date this podcast. If you're listening to this in 5 years' time, you might look back and think what we're talking about. But, with what's happened in 2020, has what you've just described become any more sophisticated or any different, do you think? Or
I think, yes, I think that most dealerships want to believe that their culture is best, right?
hmm.
So when the pandemic creates fewer customers in the service drive or fewer customers coming into the sales department, there's fewer people to handle them, but they have more time
Mm.
to help them,
Hmm.
right? They have the time to slow down, to really ask the questions, is this really what you need? Right? Do you need a X amount of X vehicle when you go to and from work? What about a certified pre-owned? Do you need a brand new one? Right.
Hmm.
So instead of taking the time to really find out and generate an experience for the customer, right? They're the pandemic has given them that ability to slow down and to ask more questions.
Yeah.
Now, as we continue to, in the United States, as we continue to move beyond and understand and deal with the pandemic, and that's really where the challenge has now become again, because the car business in the United States is very much, what have you done for me lately? And if we had all these record months in the summer, to date the podcast again, all these record months in the summer when the United States started to open up with all that pent up demand from the spring, and then now that pent up demand has been fulfilled, and now we're back in the same process again, right? So
Right.
now the customer experience starts to dwindle, right? They're
Mm.
getting more and more transactions, right? People are starting to go back to work. They got to get their car serviced. All those things are changing again. And because of the nature of the transactional piece of the business, and the cash flow that's required, or the pressure from the manufacturer, and all those things roll themselves right back up into the same challenge of the pressure of hero to zero again.
Yeah, and you talk about pressure, and you're absolutely spot on. I mean, what's going to be the next thing then? As you've mentioned the pent up demand and the increase in sales and service work. When all of that drifts off, the predictions in the UK are this is going to be a very tough winter.
Yeah,
We're starting to see things slow down already, and if you've got, when we started talking about this is guys and girls that are on sort of commission based salaries and things. What's that going to do for people's mental health if they're still under the pressure to
yeah,
go back to these processes as they were before?
yeah, yeah. It's just going to get more, unfortunately, the wrong word is opportunity, but
Mm,
it's going to create more opportunity for MENable to be and have an impact, right? The awareness, the education, and the prevention of mental health illness in the in the United States, as well as specifically in the automobile industry, is it needs to be done.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
really does, in order to generate a culture and care about the people who are really doing the work every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, no, you're absolutely right, and I think we've created a strapline as well, which is about giving the industry, giving employees effective employees back. And
Right.
creating people that helping them through these issues so that they can be effective again, and take some of those pressures off. I said earlier that was a loaded question because the reason being is that we see exactly the same in the UK. I've had conversations recently, just with somebody who was saying, the old approach that we used in training, training salespeople, for example, to do a 5-point walk around on a car. Nobody does a 5-point walk around on a car. So why are we training them on that? Why that's a process. If you're interacting with people in a different way digitally and all the rest of it, by the time they come to the showroom, they don't need you to be condescending and take them around 5 points of the car. So why the hell are we still training that? Um, it's and I think
Yeah.
actually that's actually just putting pressure on people as well. If we try and educate them in things that don't come naturally.
Right. I think it's absolutely important to communicate with the people in the way that they want to be communicated with.
Mm, mm.
Right. Some people, like if I were to call my own kids today, they would send me to voicemail and then send me a text. What's up? Right. And they would, so for my kids, it's, well, not all my kids, but I generalized all of them. But some people, the point is, some people would rather have a text message come through than a phone call conversation. Some people would even appreciate an email.
Mhm.
Right. I remember when email first came out, when a vendor would ask you for your email, you'd be like, whoa, 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 I don't give my email out to anybody.
Mhm.
Now it's like water. Yeah. Blah, 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 blah.com. Right. It's nothing to spit out an email and actually use it and communicate with it.
Yeah.
So, communicating with people in the way that they want to be communicated with is absolutely the key to the change in culture of getting away from that process-driven transactional piece and become consultative.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about the car, because we used to train on it too. Let's talk about the kind of car that you need. You have 3 children. You are a working mom, and you have you got to drop off at school by 8, and you got to pick them up at 3, and then they go take care. Find out about what that customer's life is
Mm,
first
mm.
before you shove a car down their throat, or you
Yeah.
you try to sell them something in the service drive that is not of real value to them.
Mm.
Right. That's where the training needs, in my opinion, and I'm certainly no expert, but in my opinion, to find out what it is that you need to do on a regular basis to make your family better, and how the transportation piece of that fits.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. No, that's why I said it was a loaded question, because I think from a
It's
training point of
huge.
view, we should be training people to be, coming at this from more of their character and their values and their beliefs, rather than trying to squeeze them into doing process related things that make them. It actually puts them under more pressure because they feel they have to behave in a certain way. And the analogy you used is, would you sell this stuff to your grandmother?
Yeah,
So,
it doesn't work.
no, it doesn't. And
Not in 2020. Not in
no,
2020.
absolutely right. Yeah, spot on. So you're an ambassador for MENable. So Russ, let's find out a little bit more about you. You mentioned there that you have children, and the way you put it, we're kind of thinking that you're the Waltons, that you've got. So, and I know that's not the case. So tell us a little bit about you,
Yeah,
and
it's
lead up to the PTSD stuff that we talked about as well, and the veterans thing. So, because that's
yeah.
really heartfelt.
So my wife Heidi and I, we have 7 kids. We don't have any in between us, but I have 4,
Hmm.
and she has 3, and then we have 10 grandchildren.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so more like the Brady Bunch than the Waltons, um, the for sure. But I grew up in a military family. My father was in the military, but he retired when I was about 3 or 4 years old. So I didn't really get that military kind of travel abroad, changing schools 14 times. I was lucky enough not to have to go through that part,
Hmm.
but the relationship of the military and the way that my family was run, so to speak, was two sides, right? The father that um, you do what you're expected to do, and you do it in a way that what you said you're going to do, you do,
Hmm.
right? And then a mother who was very empathetic. I'm very much my mother's child, that put other people first before themselves. And I think that's natural for mothers more than it is for fathers.
Hmm.
But she very much instilled in me to understand that you don't really know what someone's going through,
Yeah.
and that under that process and under that guise, you need to understand and not be judgmental. I think not being judgmental is probably one of the biggest things that she instilled in me. You do not know that person. You
Hmm.
do not have the right to judge. Only one has the right to judge. And taking that into account, with that whole process driven thing, and when it comes to the military, I have a lot of my friends that I grew up with, because I grew up in Colorado Springs, Colorado, which is very much a military town. All my friends' parents were in the military. A lot of my friends' parents were in the military, and then a lot of them subsequently went into the military. And with the Iran War in the 90s, and then of course after 9/11 and the Iraq War, all those things, really came to a head. I have family members that are in the military, so
Hmm.
military and the military life is very important to me, and understanding the sacrifices that those people go through. So recently, I did 22 days of 22 push-ups because 22 veterans take their own lives every day in the United States. It's tragic.
Wow, that's a
All
shocking figure.
22 every day commit
Wow.
suicide in the United States. So it's just unbelievable to me. So I have a friend I went to high school with,
Mm.
who has a companion dog, and that companion dog has to be trained, right? Because PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, is really something that is not just comes and goes. It's not like a depression where you can take a medication and it goes away. PTSD is traumatic for them every day,
Mm.
24/7, 365.
Hmm.
So he has a companion dog. That companion dog saved his life. If it weren't for that companion dog, he would have been one of the 22.
Wow.
So in order to train the companion dog, right, they have to, one, find compatible dogs,
Hmm.
and then they have to train them. Well, training of animals is time consuming, right? So think about all those things. You think, oh, just train a dog. It's not to sit, right? It's not to shake your hand. Those take
Mm.
a few hours to train. These dogs are similar to what you would see a canine in the military do.
Yeah.
They go in rooms and they separate themselves between their handler and the danger.
Mm. Mm.
Now, when it comes to PTSD, the danger is not always there, but
Mm.
it is perceived to be there.
Hmm.
It's a dark space,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? So I had a neighbor when we very first moved in here who I didn't really know personally until after he'd taken his life, um, um, Moises, and the trauma that he went through on a day-to-day basis, just in his own mind, based on the things that he saw every day, he couldn't take it anymore.
Mm.
And
Mm.
that's just absolutely tragic to me. And he couldn't. There was no place or space for him to feel safe in.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
And
exactly.
then back to my original point of, you really never know what someone is going through. When we moved into the house we live in today here in Arizona, the one of my neighbors has backyard lighting, and they leave the backyard lighting on 24/7. And I never really thought anything about, wow, why don't they turn their lights off at night? He's a veteran. He'd been shot in the neck. So about half of his, he would never know it if he told you by his appearance, but he has some severe physical, issues, being shot in the neck and almost bleeding out, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so uh, he has the lights on, and so he increased the lights here in the last few months. And when I happened to talk to him yesterday, he was we'd had a party at our home, a little, not a party but a gathering of a few friends, and he was there, and he lives right next door to me, and he said, "Oh, so the lights, oh, they don't really see him because I have a big row of trees between us, so I don't really see his lights every evening. It doesn't bother me at all." He says, "Oh, okay, good. I was a little nervous that all those lights, were lighting up your backyard too." And I was like, "Oh no, it's not a big deal," because he didn't increase, like tripled. I mean, so from 50 feet of lights to 150 feet of lights. Like
Right.
his whole backyard is completely lit
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
night, all night. And it's because he has the fear of the danger of what he cannot see.
Wow. Right. And that's come from PTSD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because when he got shot, he didn't see it.
Wow.
So um, it's a powerful message
Yeah.
to understand what PTSD does to their mind, and the paranoia that it creates
Yeah.
for not seeing and seeing what they see at war.
Yeah. Well, I think
No
what
one, no
we
one will understand it.
no, no, no. And what we've just seen there, Russ, is an example of the empathy that you clearly have, that you talked about, you've got from your mum. And, so what that demonstrates is that PTSD does not only affect the person that's involved, but can actually have an impact on the people around them as well.
Yeah.
And, hats off to you, mate, for sort of being so honest and open with us on that, and visibly able to see sort of how it affects you as well. So, um, from a back to the kind of process point of view, I think what I was getting from what you were saying there is this for me is where the processes in dealerships, for example, in our industry, fall down, because that guy may not react to the type of thing that you would expect when you apply a process and a transaction to him. Um, and as a result, if you have somebody in sales or in service, they may take that personally, or it may not, work for their own mental health because they're not getting the reaction from that customer that they're trained to expect.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
is back to your point about be kind to everyone, because you never know what battles they're facing.
No, you don't. You don't. Because I never realized why he lit up his backyard. I've lived here
Yeah,
for 3.5 years. I never realized why he lit up his backyard. I knew
yeah,
that he
yeah.
struggled, right? We'd had conversations about it. I knew about his military background and the things that he'd gone through,
Mm.
and the trials and tribulations that he's gone through, right?
But imagine how tempting that would have been, that you could have, if you didn't think in the way you do, you could have thought, well, that's just a neighbor being annoying.
Right.
You could have gone
Yes.
next door and said, hey man, could you do me a favor and turn your lights off? You don't need your lights on all night.
Right. Yeah.
In fact, I can see that conversation happening across English fences in gardens in the UK, because an Englishman's home is his castle.
Right.
um, and I can imagine neighbours falling out over things like that. And you're
Yeah.
spot on. We never know what battles people are facing in the background.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
instead of saying, "Hey, you," say, instead of being judgmental and saying, "Hey, you need to,"
Mm.
people need to ask,
Hmm.
"Hey, is there something I can do?"
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
That's great.
It's
Yeah.
just a shift in the mindset of, "How can I help you?" "Hey,
Hmm.
I notice your lights are on all the time. Is everything okay?"
Hmm.
Instead of, "I notice you're parking your car and it hasn't moved in 3 weeks. Is everything okay?"
Hmm.
Right? "I notice you haven't mowed your lawn in 3 weeks. Is everything okay?"
Yeah.
Instead of, "Dude, could you mow your damn lawn?"
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just a change in mindset.
Yeah.
And the transactional process piece of it, especially in the car business, generates that, "Hey, you haven't moved your car in 3 weeks. What are we going to do about it?"
Mm. Mm.
Right? It's just a different shift in attitude,
Mm.
right?
Yeah,
I
100%.
know this giant sport utility would probably work great for you, but it's twice as much money as what you can really afford. But
Mhm.
that's okay. I need to sell this giant sport utility because I need to make my quota.
Yeah. My mortgage depends on you making the wrong decision.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, no, you're
It's a great
spot
way to
on.
put it. That's a
Yeah.
great way to put it. My mortgage depends on you making a wrong decision.
Yeah. I'm going to write that down in a.
Yeah.
No, and you're spot on.
That's
And I mean, I get annoyed as well. And, you know, silly little things like when people refer to my car as the vehicle, you know, and
yes.
I phoned a dealership the other day to actually speak to somebody on a personal level. In fact, one of the ambassadors who's a service manager at one of the sites, fixed ops manager, and he, um, when I rang through, I said, "Oh, can I speak to this individual?" And the person that answered the phone said, "What vehicle is it regarding?" And I said, "It's not regarding any vehicle. I'm ringing up to speak to him personally." "Oh, can I take your registration number?" And I thought, "You're clearly not listening because you're just you've already asked me what vehicle it's." So you know, she was just on process, and I don't blame her at all. I blame the culture and the training or lack of it, and the sort of daily pressures that that person's under.
Yeah.
That they're just on autopilot.
Yeah. I had a very similar situation, my own experience, probably 45 days, 60 days ago.
Hmm.
My wife owns a Toyota Tacoma, and the sun visors, the springs broke, so they would just flop, so they wouldn't stay up.
Hmm.
So I called the dealership and said, "Hey, I need to make an appointment to get my visors changed because I tried to do it online and it was literally 30 days out." So I called and got a BDC representative, and she goes, "Okay, that sounds great. It'll be 2 weeks out." And I said, "Oh wow, okay." I said, "What do you even have the visors? Because the visors are very specific to my wife's Tacoma,
Hmm.
color and everything." And she goes, "Well, I don't know. That's a good question. And let me send you to parts." I sat on hold with the parts department 11 minutes.
Wow.
All right. Um, then when I got to the parts department, I gave him the last 8 of the VIN. He pops it up. "Yep, we have those in stock. No problem." "Okay, well, my appointment's not for 2 weeks. How am I going to set those aside?" And he gave me no assurance that they would set those aside.
Wow.
Right. Okay,
Two
well,
different processes.
yeah, 2 totally different processes that were broke, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So he
Yeah.
sent me back to the BDC person, and she said, "Oh, yeah, okay, well, we'll make sure that we have them." So I had to blindly trust them that they would be there
Mm-hmm.
still.
Yeah.
She said she'd handle it. And they were
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So it worked
No,
out in the end, but it's a 20-minute phone call that could have been 2.
yeah, exactly. No, you're spot on. And of course, for the UK audience, what I should probably stress is that you live in Arizona, which means that for the most part of the year, you get the sun.
Yes, I do.
So the
Yes.
sun
I do.
visors for you are a pretty key part of the car, right?
Yeah.
Whereas for us, we go, okay, well, for 6 months of the year, we don't need those.
Yeah. Yeah. But the problem with ours is they were stuck down.
All
They
right, so
wouldn't
in
fold
front of
up.
your face.
They wouldn't stay up, so they
Ah.
rested in front of the face. So we're driving like this, trying to see underneath the visor.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no, not good.
I had to take them off. So we didn't have a visor at all. Then you're driving like this, trying to avoid the sun the whole time.
Wow. Yeah. Dear, oh
So
dear. So, Russ, that's been brilliant, sort of properly getting to know you. I can really get a sense now for where the empathy comes from. You know, we've seen it ourselves a little while back, and also, you know, the connection with the veterans and stuff is brilliant. It's fantastic having you on board with MENable and having you as an ambassador, one of the founding ambassadors. Um, any thoughts or ideas now from you in terms of where we go with MENable for the US?
that's a great question. It's very open-ended.
Hmm.
I think that if we can create an awareness and an education and a prevention
Hmm.
of a crisis of mental health issues in the automobile industry,
Hmm.
I absolutely think that is a necessary piece. That we really need to start to look at the culture and how that culture would go.
Yeah.
So if there is anybody that would like to be a part of that process, that would like to be have a conversation about being part of MENable, we're volunteers here.
Hmm.
We're not it's not a for-profit kind of thing. We're literally just trying to pay it forward from the interactions and the processes and the things that we had to deal with going through the automobile business. And we hope to make a difference in the lives of other people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
making a difference in the lives of other people is really what drives me every day. I really love to see people win.
Mm, mm,
But I also love to see them happy and productive and understand where they are in the world and how they can make a difference in the
yeah.
lives of someone else too.
Yeah. Well, Russ, look, I know you and I have only physically met once. I'm sure that would have changed if 2020 had been different. But we speak a lot, and we interact a lot as well. And what I can say is that I truly value you as a good friend, even though we're however many thousand miles apart. And it's absolutely brilliant having you involved in MENable, and we couldn't be spreading the word without you. So thank you very much, sir. You're a star.
Yeah, absolutely right back at you. No doubt.
Cheers. Thank
No
you.
doubt.
Okay, well, thank you very much for joining me on this MENable Matters podcast, and we will catch up with you again very, very soon. Take care.